gonna spotlight. All right.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't
Awesome.
expecting.
I'm gonna add another one on my
No,
screen.
that's fine.
Hi. All right. So once again, for everyone watching, thank you for watching. I'm super excited to be here with Claire, um, and also once again for Marie and Amanda, if you do have any questions, you could definitely put them in the chat, and I'll look at them as we go along, or we can do a little Q&A at the end when I finish asking questions that I have. So without further ado, Claire, if you want, you can just give us a little quick introduction.
Yeah, hi. So I'm Clare Barrowman. I'm a first year associate in the litigation group at Osler in Toronto. And I summered and articled at Osler. So that's the only law firm I've ever worked at, and for that to be the case. And in terms of my background coming to law school, I did a combined honors degree in English and early modern studies at the University of King's College in Halifax. And then I did my JD and BCL at McGill, and finished with an exchange semester at the University of Copenhagen. So yeah, that's my background, I guess. Oh, I should say I'm a litigator, doing sort of a very broad practice of corporate commercial litigation.
That's awesome. Thank you for that introduction. And I didn't know that the University of King's College is in Halifax. That's really cool. You come from Halifax. That's awesome. I've always wanted to visit there. Um, all right, so I guess we can start with the questions pertaining to your undergrad. What kind of programs did you study in your undergrad at King's College?
Yeah, so King's is a very small school. It's a liberal arts college with about 1,200 students, or that was the case when I went. And it's affiliated with Dalhousie. So my degree was split between the two schools. I did English at Dal and then early modern studies at King's, which is a very interdisciplinary program doing history, philosophy, literature, some art, and architecture, I guess, a little bit too. And King's is known for their foundation year program, which is basically trying to put the whole of the Western canon of thought into 1 year of school. But it's, yeah, a very tight knit community, lots of really small classes. That was what attracted me, was that kind of interdisciplinary learning. And like I was never in a big lecture hall. So that was the appeal for me in undergrad. And it was a very kind of broad program in that way.
Yeah, you definitely come from a broad program, but a very tight knit group. And sometimes I do wish that, coming from a huge school like the University of Toronto, we have people we have like 500 people in one class. So it's hard that way to interact with your professors. And I know it's important to do that, especially for reference letters. So it was probably a lot, I guess, easier for you to do that. Kind of have that connection with professors or higher ups.
Yeah, I think the reference letters to me were not a huge challenge in the application. I had a lot of close relationships with all of my professors at King's. At Dal, I mean, Dal's a bigger school for sure. And so I think I had to put a little more kind of conscious thought into it, but I was very keen and, going to office hours and building relationships those ways. To help kind of make that a more organic request when I did ask for the applications, or for the reference letters for the applications. So I think that's kind of at a bigger school, I think that's the best approach. And I think it's ideally you start having those conversations and putting yourself forward as being really interested in the subject matter. I think profs can sometimes tell if you go to office hours just to like say that you went. And so I think being genuinely interested well in advance of meeting the letter is the best approach there. I know you didn't ask for advice on that, but I feel like that's kind of a concern I think that people have at bigger schools, how to kind of build those relationships. And I think that was the approach I took.
No, that's amazing advice. I know I didn't ask for it, but thank you for giving it. That's amazing, especially for someone who goes to a huge school. And I know it's hard to kind of have that connection there, so that's great advice. Now, I know a lot of us are planning on applying to law school, some this year even. Um, and they're getting ready to take the LSAT. Now, from what I've heard, I don't think McGill does the LSAT, do they? Did you have to take the LSAT?
Yeah, so you don't need the LSAT to apply to McGill, but I like at every stage, every juncture of my life, always do a bajillion applications. So I did write the LSAT. Although it's true, if you really are anti LSAT, then I think McGill is an option because there's no French LSAT, and to go to McGill, it's a bilingual program. So that's, I think, the rationale there. But I did write the LSAT in October before I applied.
And what was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, standardized tests I think are always kind of daunting. I also did not want to spend like $5,000, or I don't know what the going rate is, but it's like ridiculously expensive. I didn't want to do that. So I guess sort of, I don't know, maybe 8 or 10 months before I planned to write it, I spent like $40 and bought a book on Amazon. And I think that approach is totally doable. Like I only wrote the LSAT once, and I do not remember what I got, but I had a good score. Um, and I think I had to be really disciplined. I had to treat it like a course in school, especially in the kind of couple of months leading up to it. I think when I went back to school at the start of the semester, I booked time in my calendar. I really treated it like just like it was a course, put kind of the same amount of time I would put a course into studying. And a friend of mine had spent a ton of money on one of these courses and had a password to an online bank of practice tests. So she gave me her password, and I used those. But you can buy access to just the tests, and it's very inexpensive compared to the big expensive programs. And I think for some people, they do really appreciate having kind of the one-on-one instruction and the regimented approach that the programs offer. And I don't mean to talk down to some of those programs. I think they can be really excellent, but I didn't want to spend that money, and I found it was totally fine. The practice tests particularly are really the best practice. And I think a tip there is to really treat it like a real test, time it, like get really strict with the timing, and do as many practice tests as you can. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of daunting, but then half of preparing for these standardized tests, I think, is just like getting a good night's sleep. This is crazy, but my book that I bought it was like, you should eat the same breakfast that you're going to eat on test day like in anticipation of studying. And like whenever your test is scheduled, start doing your practices at the same time of day. So if you're going to write at 11 a.m., always study for it at 11 a.m. It had all these like kind of crazy tips, but I was so nervous that I did them all. I like ate the same snack. I would do it at the same time, which sounds fully crazy, but I think that really helped with like test day nerves that I already had. It was like kind of a comfortable routine in a lot of ways that I actually did find to be reassuring. I didn't have any test day jitters, and I do remember my test day score was by far the best score I had from any practice tests. So I don't know. That was just my take on it, but I know everyone has to find, I think, what works best for them.
That's awesome. I feel like that would work because of the routine and everything. And you're definitely right. I think everyone needs to find an approach that works best for them. Maybe sometimes they'll attempt to take the LSAT when they were self-studying and they didn't do that great. So then the next time they're studying, they go look for, a tutor, or they spend a little more money. It really just depends. Um, I think we have a question in the chat, which also has to do with LSAT, so it's might as well just bring it up. And they're asking if you have any tips on how to create a study schedule for the LSAT, especially if I think you said you took it during school, you kind of allotted some time during your class schedule to study for that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's right. So I think I started studying this summer. So I guess I would have finished school in like April and May. And then I bought my book around then. And over the summer, I was working, but like on weekends or days off, I would kind of flip through and read through the book. And that was still sort of fairly informal, fairly casual, like a few hours a week, but I wasn't being strict with it. But by the time I'd started school, I had kind of flipped through and tested it out. And then I really like, I always use a calendar for all my courses. So I just put in like the same amount of time in my calendar schedule. I was working and stuff too. Like I know that not everybody, I think some people choose to do it at other times because it's easier to be all intensive. But for me, kind of, I chose to filter it into my schedule. And that just meant, I think, having to be really strict with like when I was going to be studying. So I think, yeah, just putting it in my calendar. And I had friends who were writing it as well. So we would book rooms on campus where we would do our practice tests, like private study rooms. And so booking those in advance at the same time every week was kind of our approach.
That's great advice. And I know a lot of the times it is easier when you have friends doing it with you. You can hold each other accountable, work together. So I think that's really good advice, trying to find someone who is doing it with you, become acquainted with them, and kind of work together. And I think it eases the stress as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, so just continuing on, you said you graduated from McGill Law School, so I just kind of wanted to know how your experience was at that particular law school.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had a great experience at McGill. I met lots of people that I really like, still close friends. Montreal's a great city to live in, and that was really fun. I think the highlights of law school for me, though, were the more kind of experiential, hands-on aspects. I think the coursework is great, but like I did a clinic, and I volunteered at a clinic in my second year of law school, and then in my third year, I was a director, working in the community. People would call in with questions, and we would help research and give them whatever answers we could. And in Quebec, the rules are kind of strict. You're not allowed to give any kind of legal advice until you're called to the bar. So we could only give information. So rather than telling somebody what option to take, what path they should take, we would give them kind of a lay of the land of what their options are and what tools are available to them, that kind of thing, which was amazing. Very daunting. You're kind of out there dealing with real people with real problems, but I think really important work. And because there's a huge deficit in terms of legal understanding and legal information and affordable resources. So I think that was like something I wanted to do, but also a great learning experience. And then I also did a moot in my third year, which was also an incredible experience, getting to kind of tackle a real problem. I got to work with other students and with my coaches, and we all took it incredibly seriously. And I think that made a big difference. We also got to go to Europe for a few weeks for the actual moot, which was really fun. So I think those kind of hands-on aspects of law school to me are what really stand out as being the most rewarding and memorable.
Yeah, that sounds like so much fun. I've never done mooting. I've done mock trials. I've been always interested in mooting, but I've never actually gone around to do it. But I think you're totally right. It's just kind of picking up the hands-on experiences rather than just like, and I love how you give me that answer because usually when I ask lawyers, they're like, well, it's a lot of work. There's a lot of readings. There's a lot of essays. But it's good to know that there's other things beyond that that can really add to the entire experience of law school. So I think it's very reassuring to know that there's those opportunities as well, other than just you're in your books, you're studying all the time. So, yeah. Um, Now, at what point in your life did you decide you wanted to pursue a legal career? Did you always know that that was something you wanted to go into? I know you came from a very broad program back in Halifax, so was there anything else that you were considering before you went to law school?
I think law school was in the back of my mind for a long time. Like, I think I thought about it in high school, but I knew I was going to do another degree first. And I mean, it's very much true that your undergrad degree can be in literally anything. Like, there's no, I think some programs, there's more substantive knowledge that, I mean, it's true, you can go to med school even if you did a music degree, but there is also like factual knowledge that you need to have as a doctor. So even people who do music degrees also have to take biology at some point. And law school's not like that. So I kind of had that in my head, but then I sort of put it aside and just dove into kind of my intellectual interests in undergrad. And then when that was wrapping up, I didn't want to go into academia. I knew that. And so that's where law school started to seem like a more serious possibility. And I spoke with my aunt, who is a lawyer, and I think she made it really clear that based on her experience, legal education is really a door opener, not a door closer. A lot of the people that she'd studied with ended up doing all kinds of different things, some of them practicing lawyers, some of them nothing to do with law at all. But I think in a lot of ways, it's still a great learning experience and actually a good stepping stone to a lot of different career paths. So I think I went to law school without having fully decided I wanted to be a lawyer, which sounds kind of weird, but I think a lot of people actually end up doing that. And then even when I finished law school, I was really interested in practice and really open and curious about it, but I don't think I had, it's hard to describe, but I don't know that I was dead set on practicing law, and at least definitely not being a litigator. And that was a big part of the reason why I went to a big full service firm that does a lot of different types of practice. I wanted to get the chance to actually try different things out. And with the sort of formal recruitment that comes out of law school, the general kind of pattern is that you do a summer term at a law firm. And then depending on the firm, I mean, I'm talking about the big firms now. I know it's different with smaller firms as well, but we usually do a summer and then you do your articles. And then depending on the firm, you might be invited back as an associate. But all that to say, when I summered at the firm, I realized that I liked practice. So it wasn't really until I was basically like directly on the path to being a lawyer working in a law firm that I realized it was what I wanted to do. But I think I was really open and really curious kind of at every stage of the process. And that's what led me to where I am now.
That's great. And you're definitely right. I know a lot of my professors who aren't necessarily lawyers, but they did go to law school. I know people who go to law school. Well, I don't know people personally, but like I know there are people who go to law school and become politicians and work in the government. So there's definitely a lot of different pathways that law school can take you. But I definitely agree with you on the fact that it's a great stepping stone. But if it was me, I feel like if I did start articling and start practicing, I would just be dead set, like, this is what I want to do. So, but yeah, that's great. And just continuing on about your career itself, what field of law do you currently practice in? And I always like this question the most. What is the thing about this field that you like the most and what you dislike?
Ooh. Yeah, so I do have a very broad litigation practice now, and I mean I'm incredibly junior, so I think that's definitely a part of it. Although there are definitely partners at my firm who also have the general practice and never really specialize on kind of one area of litigation. But our firm generally represents, in almost every case, represents companies. So we don't do family law or criminal law, but almost every other area of kind of litigation that involves corporations. So class actions and different commercial disputes in all areas, including regulatory disputes and work. I do quite a bit of environmental law, which is really interesting. But we do, kind of any industry, and that means there's a huge diversity in the work that we do. And also, and that trickles down to both the subject matter of the files, but also the size, and that affects the duration. So sometimes I'll be involved in work that's only, it'll be just a few weeks, like a little mini, like an advisory issue, or helping with kind of a fairly straightforward application or something like that. But then I'm on a tax litigation file now that it's very clear is sort of a multi-year process, and sometimes files can go on for a decade. It's not really that unusual. But my favorite thing about the practice is how diverse it is, that I don't have like a typical file or a typical project. It's always different. And that means I'm always being challenged. I'm always learning new things, both about legal practice, but also about like different industries. I've been involved in a few construction arbitrations, and I don't know anything. Well, I can't say that anymore, but I knew genuinely nothing about construction. And getting to be involved in those files, you get to actually learn about the subject matter, which I find really exciting. So that's my favorite part. And I think my least favorite part, I don't know that this is unique to litigation, but the workloads can definitely be very heavy. And there can definitely be kind of patches where you are completely immersed and all you're doing is working. And hopefully you've got a great team of people that you're working with, and you're really invested in the file and getting to do at least something kind of interesting. But I think the workload it can come in waves, and being on different files, sometimes multiple files will get busy at once, and managing the practice can be very challenging. But I don't know that that's unique to litigation. I don't think so. I think that's just being a lawyer, and being a lawyer at a big firm, especially. But I think it comes and goes. It ebbs and flows. And I think, yeah, as long as you enjoy the work, you can kind of get past that hurdle.
Yeah, I think as long as you are immersed in it, and I think because your field is so broad and you're constantly working on different things, there's never really a dull moment. So the fact that, because of that, you get more immersed in your work, and I feel like you're more interested in taking on the files, which makes things a lot easier. I know if you actually like doing something and you're interested in it, it makes the work a lot easier. But I think in general, work is just it's just what a lawyer does, all that work. Um, but I guess that kind of leads on to my next question. How do you balance your work with just, your social life? I know it's hard for a lot of lawyers to answer that question.
I shouldn't laugh at that question. It's a very important question. I think it's a lifelong kind of challenge. I think to kind of manage your practice and keep things balanced. I mean, I'm very nervous about this, but I'm supposed to run a half marathon in like 3.5 weeks, which I don't feel equipped for. But I think with those kinds of things, whether it's, a significant other or friends or like an activity, I think you really just have to prioritize it for yourself. For me, like I try to set those boundaries, I think, in this profession. And this might depend a bit on the specific work environment, but no one's going to kind of offer for you to take a break or to kind of offer to help you. I mean, there are supports available, but I think you really have to be the one to set boundaries for yourself. And I think once you do set boundaries, my experience has been that people are very respectful of it. But I think just kind of actively carving out that space in your life. And, it's funny, this is the first time that I haven't had like an end date. I think being a student for the vast majority of my life, there's always like a milestone to hit, a graduation, end of a semester, just get this degree, and even articling, there's an end date. And I think now I'm looking ahead, and that no one is going to finish things it's just this great unknown ahead of me, which I think puts all the more kind of importance on setting boundaries and having that kind of long-term point of view of what do I need in my life to keep me, not just slog it out until the finish line, but really build kind of a sustainable thing. But it's really hard, to be honest. It is hard. I think it's a constant struggle.
I like how you put that it's like the unknown. Once you get out of law school, or not even law school, I feel like maybe it's just any career that you have, it's just there's so much uncertainty, which can be very exciting, but also very nerve-wracking. Like I think about that because you're so used to, I mean, not really due dates, but like end end dates, like you were
Yeah.
saying. It's like, okay, I'm in my third year. Next year I'm gonna graduate. Then maybe I'll go do my master's. Then go to law school, graduate from there, and then what? So I like how you did put that, but it's also very nerve-wracking at the same time. Um,
No, and I don't mean to be like daunting or negative about it, but I do
oh,
think to be truthful, like,
for sure.
yeah, it's hard.
For sure. No, it's definitely hard, but um, it's good it's still amazing when you have that balance. Um, so oh, I lost my questions. What does a typical day in your career look like in terms of responsibilities and tasks? And I feel like maybe it's very different. Sometimes when I ask, let's say, criminal lawyers this, because they're more focused on, high profile cases, a lot of their cases look the same, so that means a lot of their days kind of look the same. But for you, it might be a little more fluid just because you work in a little more kind of diversified firm with different cases. So, if you could answer that to the best of your ability.
I mean, I think that's really insightful of you and definitely true. I don't think I have like a typical day, because again, it depends on the files that I have and which ones are busy at what times. Um, One of the things too that's different is some of the files will be have a big team of lawyers on them. Like I've been on files where they're at like 7 or 8 lawyers, which is huge, huge team. And on those files, my role might be more circumscribed to sort of maybe it's a certain part of the case or a certain set of tasks. And then on smaller files that are more leanly staffed, maybe with just myself and the partner or myself, a partner and an associate, I'll have more ownership over that file, and have kind of a broader range of tasks. But that's kind of painting in broad strokes. I think, um, each case is unique, each file is unique. But to give kind of a more concrete answer, a lot of the work of a junior associate involves in litigation a range of tasks. So document review, going through the kind of factual documents at play in the case, which is often seen as kind of the sort of grunt work. And it can be kind of, it's not quite as like creative of a task as some of the other work we do. But it's also it can be very interesting because you're getting to really see the inner workings of a business, reading documents and emails and all these things. And it's such a critical part of the work on a file to really know like what actually happened, and what kind of evidence is out there. But other work that we'll do will be research. That's sort of the most kind of law school adjacent work, looking into the state of the law, sometimes factual research too, but usually case law research or the history of legislation, to help to develop legal arguments or prepare for or sort of decide on legal arguments, and decide on kind of what approach makes most sense. And then also drafting work, so drafting different court documents that'll get submitted. That's work that I really enjoy. I think it's the most, to me, it's like a creative aspect of the job, and it kind of gets to mix a little bit of all of those other things of dealing with the law and the facts and trying to tell a story and be persuasive. And so I think that, yeah, that's sort of broadly speaking, kind of, I think, range of typical tasks. I'm sure I'm forgetting things, because it really can vary a lot. And some of the factual research too can be really kooky. I think actually one of the first things I ever had to do at the firm when I was a summer student was like go searching for stuff on Facebook. Like it can be really, everything can be really unique and different. And yeah, no day is the same.
No day's the same. Yeah, that's actually honestly because I'm kind of going into like wanting to go into family law or criminal law, but now that you speak of it, it's kind of good to wake up and be like, I have no idea what's gonna happen today. I might have this case. I might work on something like this. So yeah, I feel like maybe it's what makes it a little more not fun if you're working on a case that's not so fun, but like interesting. Um,
And it can be fun. It can be fun
yeah.
too.
Well, that's good. Um, and I was wondering if there are any cases that stood out to you. I know obviously it would be great if you could discuss an example, but if you do have to keep it confidential, we will definitely respect that. But if there is any case that you could maybe describe in a very general sense, that's particularly stood out to you, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. I'm trying to think of like a fun one. I should have planned a fun. I mean, I guess one of the first like cases I was involved in when I was a summer student, was at the Ontario Securities Commission. It had to do with an issuer trying to get listed, and I mean, I don't know how it kind of to get into sort of the details of the facts of it, but I think my interest in the file was that I had no background in securities. I didn't know how any of it worked. We were dealing with a fund that wanted to be entirely based on cryptocurrency. I don't really know anything about crypto either. And so in working on that file, it was the biggest thing I worked on in the summer. I spent a lot of time on it, and I got really immersed in both of those areas, and had some really good mentorship to help kind of bring me through that kind of somewhat daunting process of getting to learn about those topics. And it was definitely the steepest learning curve I've ever experienced, but also really rewarding. And I was never alone in it. Some of the associates on that file were really, really good at kind of helping to teach me. And I got to get involved in research right away, and then did a lot of drafting in the end. I shouldn't say a lot, I did some, a little bit. I was still a summer student and it was still very new to me, but I found that really, really exciting. And getting to go to the hearings and to see the oral arguments presented by the partners was incredibly exciting and motivating. Having kind of been through a few months of kind of building up what those arguments would look like, that was kind of the most exciting thing. And I think that's where I started to really fall in love with an advocacy practice, of getting to see that process of going from an idea to an argument, and seeing that presented. It was so exciting.
That's so cool. I'm glad you got to experience that and how that really stood out to you. But as you were talking, and kind of just a question kind of popped up in my mind. Were you ever intimidated by something that you looked at and you don't know? I mean, I know you even talk about now in your current field, you work on cases that have to do with construction, and you don't know too much about construction. And, you talked about cryptocurrency. And if I went to if I was doing summer school and I saw a case about cryptocurrency, I'd be like, I don't know what to do with this. So, do you ever get intimidated by it? And if so, how do you kind of overcome that intimidation and maybe even ask for help?
Yeah, no, I mean, I definitely do get intimidated. And I think like imposter syndrome and all these things are very, very real. And I think, but on the flip side, I think a big part of a broad litigation practice is that you're always kind of getting tossed into these situations. And so I do think on each file, when it's a new, even if you do a lot of work in a certain area, there's still kind of a getting up to speed, and particularly if it's a new type of file. And I find that the first little bit can be kind of a little drudgy. You're kind of going through and trying to get your bearings, and every industry, they all love acronyms and short forms, and sometimes that's the hardest part, is just knowing what like words they're using. It's like a different language with each file. But then the exciting thing is that you get to like learn kind of the inner workings of different industries, which I find really exciting, and motivating on a file, to kind of get a sense of how this like microcosm, this little world works. And I mean, there's a ton of help. Like I think, the firm, the way that a big firm is structured, there's kind of all these levels, right? There's the most senior partners, and there's junior partners, and senior associates, and mid-level associates, and junior associates, and then students. And so there's a lot of levels, and people that you can turn to kind of at every stage for help. And I think it's a very, like, our environment is very open door. So I've never been afraid to ask for help from an associate, or even a partner. I mean, I think people are really open to that. And often the thing is, when it comes to the factual side of things, and sometimes even some of the law, you're on the ground, you know as much as anyone. And the expectation is not that you become like an expert in construction. I am very far from that, like incredibly far. But it's to sort of learn enough that you can tell the story in the best way possible. And something that I've been getting to do more as an associate, is talking to people at the client, like employees at whatever our client is, who will answer our questions and walk us through things, and show us PowerPoint slides that they've used it in a project, and we can ask questions and get that back and forth, and work together to figure out what happened and what's the best way we can tell this story together. And I find that kind of collaborative approach, both kind of with people, lawyers within the firm, and then also with the client, is really fun. And so you're never alone. It's not like, you're like, okay, learn all of crypto overnight by yourself. Like, it's not at all like that. And yeah, no, it's exciting and it's fun, and there's lots of support.
I think that's definitely a misconception that a lot of people have. I know that's a misconception that I have, that, once you're a lawyer, you kind of work on your own. especially obviously if you kind of own your own firm, then you kind of call the shots. But even if you're an associate, um, for some reason I always thought that this is your case, you have to work it on your own. But um, it's good to know that there is that collaborative aspect within a lot of firms, especially big firms. I feel like bigger firms with more associates, there would be that more collaborative aspect. Not to say that smaller firms don't have that, but I definitely think that's a misconception that a lot of people have, which kind of leads me to my next question. What do you think? I love how I'm leading on to different
Yeah.
questions. This is going great. what is, what do you think is a common misconception about lawyers that you particularly hear the most?
I mean, it's funny. I think a lot of conceptions about lawyers are true. But no, I mean, lawyers aren't like evil or whatever. But I think the biggest misconception about litigators specifically is that they're very like aggressive and antagonistic, and like a bulldog, you know? And I definitely don't think of myself that way. And I don't work with anyone who's like really aggressive. I mean, I think a lot of us take very firm stances and want to put the very best foot forward for our client, but that does not translate into um, like being a jerk, to put it simply. But it also, I mean, we're very collaborative within the firm and with our clients. Like the energy is very open and collaborative. Like I keep saying that word, but it's true. And even with opposing counsel to some extent, I mean, sometimes it's only on sort of very procedural issues of like timing and things like that. But generally, it's very collegial. Like I've never witnessed any kind of like yelling match or, I mean, bad blood. Like it's a relatively small community. And of course, it happens that people can be very aggressive or whatever. But by and large, it's a very, the bar is very small and people know each other, and you often end up working with the same firms and similar people. And I think people are generally very collegial, and it is very collaborative. Like the practice is not, fight, fight, fight. And I don't think that's a good style of advocacy, to be honest, of just like fighting every fight. You have to pick your battles, and it's never ever personal. Like it's never like you hate the other lawyer. That's like the furthest thing. It's, you can get frustrated with a lawyer, but it's always very polite and professional. And yeah, I think that's the biggest misconception.
Yeah, it's really cool. And it's funny you say that because I think I don't know if I was in grade 11 or 12, but we went to the courthouse for, I'm pretty sure Amanda was with me as well, because she was in my class, but we went to the courthouse for kind of like a school trip. And I remember sitting in court, and I don't remember what the case was, but it appears as if the defense and the crown, they hated each other. You could just tell there was so much tension in the room. And even during like the question and answer periods, I remember a lot of us were super intimidated by the lawyers and by the judge. And a lot of us wanted to ask questions. We were kind of kept to ourselves because I think, I don't know, maybe a lot of us just thought that they weren't, I don't want to say like normal people, but like there was something like different, like I don't know, but they just seemed really scary to a lot of us. But it's good to know that it's very collegial, and there's the collaborative aspect once again. And yeah, I think Amanda was saying that it was definitely intense. No, it definitely was. I think it had to do with the criminal law, so I think it was tense regardless because it was talking about a crime. But just the way the two lawyers were interacting, I think, that brings forth that misconception. And even just how you see it on the movies, you watch like Suits or, Law and Order, whatever, it's all acting. But I think when people do watch that, they perceive that that's how it actually is when it's not. But it's good that you confirm that it's not.
I mean, like in any profession, like there's assholes in every profession,
True.
in
Yeah.
every type of person. But I think like for them, that's not been my experience. Like I haven't really witnessed any of that. And I mean, again, it's always going to be true a little bit. Although I do have to say, Suits is like the most insane. It's like the furthest thing from. I don't think. Yeah, Suits is a crazy show.
I've never watched it. I've never watched it. What's like I've never watched it, but I know I we did a show in high school. It was Legally Blonde. We did it like the musical Legally Blonde, and it was funny because I remember even asking a lawyer a long time ago whether it's the same, like it's somewhat the same, and they said there was a few similarities, but there's still a whole bunch of misconceptions that people can get just from watching, a movie like that. Um, but yeah,
I think Legally Blonde is honestly more realistic than Suits. I don't know.
that's what I heard. That's what I
I
heard.
think that's true. The Good Wife, if someone wants like a legal show, I think The Good Wife is a good one. I mean, none of these shows are like real life, but
Of course,
um,
of course.
yeah, that one is like some more. I mean, the timelines are crazy and there's all this drama and all this stuff, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's like maybe sort of more realistic. I don't know.
That's good. I'll definitely check that out. Okay, so I have two more questions. They kind of go hands in hands, but what advice, if you can go back in time before, you even went to law school, before you even knew that you were going to go to law school and be able to talk to your younger self, um, what advice would you give her?
That's a tough question. I mean, I think the thing is like it's so easy to get stressed at all of these junctures of trying to get admitted, of writing these tests. Like I think I often really like bought into that pressure and, got so stressed by it. And I mean, it's kind of structured that there's lots of different junctures where it feels like you're competing, whether that's with yourself or others, there's all that pressure. And I think like the reality is it is a demanding career and a lot of the programs it takes to get through it are really demanding. And I think to some extent it's out of your hands. You do the best you can and try not to sweat it. But I think the best way to get through it is having a strong community to support you. And I think there is a lot of collaboration in law school, but I think the more you lean into that and to supporting one another, the better. I think it really helps at every juncture. I mean, when I think of all the most stressful times in my life, like having a support system of friends, both in the program and or the career, whatever, and outside of it, who can give you that kind of perspective to be like, you're being crazy. And then also the person who will hunker down with you and be crazy with you. Like, I think you need a little bit of both. And I think that stays true, like at every juncture. I think that's true for me now too. I need like friends I work with and friends I don't work with, who can kind of shake me out of it. So I think, I mean, I don't know, I guess I did do that already, but I think just try not to sweat it and to rely on your friends.
I think it's definitely important to have that support system. And luckily I do know a lot of people now who are going into law school, and hopefully, who knows if we end up going to the same law school, but just even if they're there through that process of getting in, holding me accountable, supporting me, encouraging me. I think it's super important. So I definitely agree with you. And like I said, I guess you kind of already answered that question because that is advice to all of us in itself. But I know many of us are, heading into the direction of becoming lawyers, and I know it can be very daunting, but also very exciting. Um, but what is one piece of advice that you can give the next generation of aspiring legal professionals like yourself?
I don't know that I'm qualified to give advice at that level, but I mean, oh yeah, I think advice to the next generation. I mean, I think it's so important to keep an open mind and to kind of not necessarily do things the way that they've always been done before, be really open to new experiences and to trust your gut, when things, if something feels good or feels bad, I think that's really important at going through the process, and to reach out and ask for help. I think a lot of people feel very daunted to reach out to lawyers or um, someone who might not come from a family that has lawyers. I think can be particularly hard to not have like that obvious person that you can turn to and ask questions that might feel stupid. Um, and I think like so many people are so happy to chat, and I think I know so many people I work with, if you just ask, you don't have to have any connection. If you just say that you're interested, if you don't necessarily feel like you identify with the image in your head of what a lawyer looks like, but you're interested in going into law, I think just reaching out and talking to someone and getting their experience. And I mean, I think that's why this kind of program is so great. I think it's not one size fits all, and you can really build a practice that works for you. And whether or not, anyone who's a lawyer who's gone to law school, I think people are really open to helping. And I think like our profession has a responsibility to do that, because there are like far too many white men and white people in general. And, it's a kind of, the profession I think does need to shake up those that, I'm trying to find the word, like that dominant kind of historical legacy. And so, yeah, I think it's really important to just ask, put your hand up, and people are really willing to help.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Claire. I definitely appreciate that. I know everyone who's watching will definitely appreciate that advice. I think that's pretty much it for me. I don't know. Well, thank you first of all for answering my questions. I don't know if Amanda, Maria, or Gloria have any other questions that they want to ask um, before we close. Yeah, Gloria, you can definitely go ahead.
Hi, yeah, so I do have a question. I'm just wondering if you would also be interested in giving shadowing opportunities for students who's watching this recording.
Oh yeah, totally. No, 100%. I know it's like a little weird with COVID now still, but I think, fingers crossed, knock on wood, we're kind of out of that a little bit. But 100%. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Can just email.
Amazing,
Always happy.
amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no pressure. I know it's hard sometimes coming up with like questions. I don't need to keep anyone, but I'm also always happy to like if anyone has an email wants to email me or anything like that, happy to chat.
For sure. Thank you so much. I think I have one last question, I guess. It just kind of popped into my head, especially because you were talking about, the dominance and the historical legacy of law and the legal profession in itself. Did you have any challenges being, you know, a woman in law? And I know a lot of the times we do ask a lot of the female lawyers that come on here if it's a little harder because of that. If you have ever been looked down upon, um, or I guess I don't know, someone thought that you weren't really good enough or couldn't do it. Um, have you ever kind of experienced that or felt that way?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been very lucky externally. I think I've had really great mentorship from women and also from men too, to be honest, who've um, you know, treated me really the same as anyone and given me lots of good support and great opportunities. But I think, whether that's the case or not, I think the way that we're socialized, a lot of things, feelings of self-doubt, of just the attitude that you have of, your own self-confidence. And I think women were taught to listen and to be self-critical, and there are good skills. I think in a lot of things that women are taught are really valuable, to listening, I think is a really good skill. And I think women are definitely taught more to listen and you know, to have that kind of take a beat before you speak. But I think that can sometimes go too far, where you self-censor and have self-doubt. And I've experienced that at every juncture, but I think I do think, the support system that is formally in place at the firm, but also the informal bonds and supports that we have, and being able to talk to one another and kind of support one another. A lot of the junior women in litigation at Osler are so supportive and really candid and open with each other, and we share a lot of those feelings of doubt and concerns, and just being able to kind of hear someone else say it, I think can really help shake you out of it a little bit and keep doing your best. I mean, I think it's still a challenge. I think we're still working to solve some of these issues, but I think just supporting one another is, I think, the best approach.
Yeah, I think it just goes back to once again that support system. It's good to have that reassurance as well. I'm hoping I get to work with. I mean, I already work with. We do have a few men in this organization, obviously, and they're amazing. But I know I'm working with an amazing group of women who I know will get so far in their law career, and I'm so excited to see them all grow. And I hope to continue working with amazing women in the law field as well. But with that being said, I don't think we have any more questions. I will let you go. I know you must be very busy, but thank you so much for joining us today. It's been an honor, and especially the fact that pre-law shadowers is now 1 year old. It's been really great to do this, particularly today. It's kind of special. So thank you so much, Gloria, Amanda, and Maria. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you so much for watching. For the people who are watching on YouTube. And yeah, that's it for me. Good luck to Claire with all your work, your future endeavors. Thank you so much once again.
No, it's been my absolute pleasure, and congrats on the 1 year anniversary, and good luck on exams and getting through the end of the year. I'm sure it'll all go really well, and getting and doing law and all of that. So good luck to you.
Thank you. Hopefully it all works out.
Definitely.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.